they closed Sea to Sky Highway. Yeah, it's pretty scary.
I can hear the planes and the helicopters and zooming around over there because I'm close to the coast.
Okay, we are now live.
Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. It is 9:17 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order. And I'd like to start in a good way by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Nequalahem, Bowen Island. Welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Monday, June 26th. We are in a bit of a different format today. I'm off the island right now, traveling in the States for work. So I appreciate everybody gathering this way, and we'll have a new format of public comments. I understand that there's some people in the room there at the municipality, and welcome to everybody who's joining us online and by live stream as well on YouTube. I note many of the other elected officials are on the line here with us today, so I'd like to introduce them. And if you can just give a wave to your camera as I say your name so everybody knows who you are online and in person. This is different format, so I'll just go by the boxes here on the screen. So starting to my right, we have Councillor Judy Getty, followed by Councillor Sue Ellen Fast.
Hello.
Councillor Tim Wake. And Councillor Allison Morse. We're also joined by other members of our professional staff this evening, our Chief Administrative Officer, Liam Edwards. I see our Manager of Planning both in the room and his smiling face, Daniel Martin, and our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insignia. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the public comment and Q&A portions of the meeting, your presence and voice will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca, as well as on our YouTube channel, which is streaming live right now and will be available in perpetuity for as long as YouTube exists. For folks that are watching online or in person, the full council package or meeting package for tonight's meeting can be found on our website at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And with that said, I will look to our corporate officer for any addition of late items to the agenda before I look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Yes, so we have an on-table package that was circulated by email earlier, and that's item 3.6. There was a revised recommendation. 3.8, there were revised attachments 1 and 2 to the staff report. At 8.2, there were 2 additional letters from the public regarding the development variance application. And 8.3A, 1 additional letter from the public regarding a development variance application. And 12.3, 2 additional letters from the public regarding the proposed regional park with camping use and keep running trails.
Okay. Fantastic, thank you. So with that said, I will look for a motion that council approve the agenda and on table items for the June 26th, 2023 regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that carries. Moving on to public comments. How many public comments do we have this evening?
Sorry, we have 3 public comments signed up this evening. They're all on Zoom. The first of which, so 3 total.
Total? Okay, great. So we'll do the full 3 minutes each for each public comment. And if I could get the corporate officer to set a timer for 2 minutes and 45 seconds, just to give the commenters fair warning that the time is coming to a close. And whenever you're ready, we can call the first commenter.
Okay, so first up we have Robin Fenton.
Hello, Ms. Fenton. Good to see you.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see everybody. I'm starting my timer here so I can watch as well. I'll try to be quick.
Okay.
So I'm here this evening to speak to you. Birch, Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing has a variance application before you this evening. So I just wanted to say a few words. I know a couple of the councillors have been along for the ride the last however many years, but I know there's also lots of new councillors So just very briefly to discuss kind of the history behind the variance, and I know Daniel will touch on it a bit in his report. There was quite a long process to get to the site that we received, the very specific site behind the health center. And then there was a very collaborative process between the health center, the fire hall, staff at the time, and Birch, really collaborating on that site plan. And if you ever, I can give you the whole background later, but there's lots of easements. There was lots of discussion on how to access and the parking. So there was a ton of work done, again, making the best of the really small, tight site that we've been given. And we really want to try to maximize the use of that site. So we're proposing the 24 units and only the sort of 10 parking spaces, I believe is the number that we can fit on the site. There's literally physically no other way to fit more parking on the site. So the only true alternative would be to reduce the number of units, which I don't think anybody wants. And it makes the actual project less financially viable if we reduce the number of units. So that's just a bit of the background. We've been given a very tight site. We're trying to absolutely maximize the use of it, maximize the number of units we can get. And just given the physical restraint and all of the, complicated but very successful collaboration we have with our neighbors and how we've done it, we're really just restricted on the parking. And so I think there's a couple concerns. I'm not sure if they'll come up here, but I feel that a lot of them, or the two main ones, I think, are the height, and the fire department had a few comments on that, and the parking, which we share the concern with the health center about the difficulties of parking. So we're hoping that can all be worked on collaboratively with staff, with the municipality when we get to like the building permit stage. I know the fire hall concerns, fire department concerns can likely be addressed at building permit, and the parking, once we know that the project's funded and proceeding, I think then we can really enter into active conversations about how to address the parking, potentially, collaboratively working to use the remainder lot for some excess parking, those kind of things. So I think there's solutions, and hopefully it'll be very clear, and I'm sure Daniel will give a great presentation and be able to answer your questions, but I just wanted to give a little bit of background and know that we're very excited about this project. We're aiming for an application to BC Housing in September. And so this variant and having this in place will be wonderful to have in place with the zoning, with the land, and it'll give us, we really want to put our best foot forward with a very strong application in September. So yes, thank you very much for your time.
Next, we have Jane.
I'm muted.
Gray.
I'm sorry. Thanks so much for being here, Ms. Fenn. I really appreciate it, and council appreciates the work as well. And Ms. Gray, did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, it was Jane Gray.
Okay.
I don't see a Jane Gray in our Zoom list. Jane, are you there? Okay. Well, then we'll move on to number 3, which is John Reed.
Right. Mr. Reed, are you with us?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hello, we can see you and we can hear you.
Great, thank you. I'm here in support of a development variance permit application for 834 Captain's Way. Jane is my mother-in-law, together with her, so I'll speak on her behalf. We're trying to renovate a house that's set back from the ocean, and it's been a long process because some of the areas of the upper deck and lower terrace are over and on Crown land. We've made a proposal to remove those areas that are non-conforming in order that we can proceed with a development variance permit application without getting a license of occupation from the province, which we're hoping we can continue to proceed with. One item that it relates to those areas that have been removed is a new exterior stair. There is an existing stair, but as a result of removing some of the area of the lower terrace, we've had to encroach upon the side yard setback in order that we can get landings at the top and bottom of the stair within the area afforded to us within the crown, inside the crown land setback. We've had letters of support from both neighbors, including the neighbor on that side of the property. And yeah, we're just here to witness the council meeting, and thank you for your time. And anyway, look forward to seeing the council meeting come together. It's my first time visiting a council meeting. I'm a resident on Captain's Way, as well as my mother-in-law a little bit further down the street. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, Mr. Reed, and you're always welcome to our council meetings at any time. And to the corporate officer, that is the last public comment, I believe.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So moving on in our agenda, item 3, the consent agenda. So I will look to councilors for any items that they wish to pull from the consent agenda. And I will start with Councillor Getty and then
I'd like to
Councillor
pull.
Fast.
Thanks. I'd like to pull 3.7, please.
3.7.
The
Councillor
roof-
Fast.
3.6, please. I'd like to pull.
3.6. Any other councillors wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will look for a motion to adopt the rest of the consent agenda. So moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. I saw her hand up. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. The consent agenda items we will deal with in numerical order. So I will look to 3.6, the amendment of resolution 23-22 to explicitly include previously endorsed interior patron capacity for the lounge endorsement area application for Bowen Cider House at 1125 Grafton Road. Councillor Fast, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to pull this item because to be consistent with my earlier voting and my concerns about 150 people capacity times 10 events a year, which could be all in the summer. To me, that's the scale of concerns people have about the ferry and the roads, safety on the roads, similar to the concerns around Cape Roger Curtis camping concerns. And to me, this is an event facility, not a farm. So I'm going to be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Any other discussion on this item? Councillor Morse.
I just wanted to clarify, the resolution we're voting on is the one that was in the late items agenda. Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so we do need a.
I've got it.
You got it?
I'll move the motion as presented. Do you want me to read it?
I think we're okay for now. So it is in the on table package. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Sorry,
by Councillor. Pardon me? Councillor
I was
Getty?
wondering what the motion was.
Sure.
It's in your on table package. Do you want me to read it?
I've got the on table package in front of me. So the motion is just to accept the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
No, it's a different one. It's got to change.
It has to change. So maybe as it seemed like there is a little bit of fuzziness here, maybe I could get the Chief Administrative Officer to comment a little bit on the nature of the change.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So my understanding is that, Councillor Getty, do you have the on-table package in front of you there?
I'm just double checking what I've got. I've got a revised agenda with the red markings, and I'm just looking to see what's.
No, it's an email from Sophie that came at 4:04 p.m.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Put it up on the screen here. So my understanding is that the revised recommendation here, so this is coming back to the comments that we originally provided to the LCRB regarding the Bowen Cider House, but it wasn't explicitly stated the capacity of the indoor, the exterior, and the combined, which is the nature of the change that's on the screen here.
So adding to the mayor's comments, of the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch wanted to see explicitly what the interior lounge capacity in the original council approved motion. It had the combined capacity of both indoor and outdoor, and the provincial agency wanted to see the specifics of indoor. separated out.
So nothing's really changed from what we were talking about before. It's just a clarification for the agency.
That's correct.
Yes, which is why it was in the consent agenda. So we have a motion that's the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand and say nay. And was that just, that was, sorry, I had to stop the screen share. That was just Councillor Fast in opposition, if I'm correct?
Correct.
So the motion carries. Moving on to item 3.7, which is the roof replacement for storage structure at Bowen Island Recycling Depot. Councillor Getty, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Have we heard about this before? I am not familiar with it. I'm feeling like it's the first time I've heard this, and I'm wondering if we're in the process, or I thought that the asset management plan was supposed in our strategic planning was going to be the priority before we took on any new projects. And I'm wondering if this is about to collapse, if we've got a problem that needs to be dealt with, and some sort of a I have no difficulty with the fact that it's the roof may very well need replacing. I'm just not sure what the timing is on this. And it feels like it's something new.
I have two staff comments in the queue. I'll look to our CFO to respond first, and then the CAO if he has additional comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair, this project it's part of the capital plan. It's our capital plan, when presented to council, is not delineated into specific projects. After the capital budget was approved, the director of engineering indicated what specific allocations he was looking for. This event actually happened with one of the snow incidents in the winter time. The roof of this storage shed actually completely collapsed. So it was earmarked, and we started going out to price a replacement steel frame covered structure for it. So this is included and can be accommodated within the approved capital budget. We are just going through the procurement process and getting council's approval to award the contract.
Thank you.
And to the CAO.
Thank you, Mayor. And through the chair, just adding on to what their CFO said, our procurement policy requires that contracts that exceed $50,000 require council approval. So that's why it's here today. Otherwise, if it was a lower amount, because it was part of the original budget contemplation, then it would have just proceeded through the normal tender process, or procurement process. So we're seeing it here tonight because it just squeaks over the $50,000 threshold, but it's definitely a need to support the bird services.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. To Councillor Morse.
I was just going to say, looking at the picture that is in the Director of Engineering's report, it definitely needs replacing. Can't wait.
This one here, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so the recommendation is that council approve the award of a contract to Easy Build Structures for supply and installation of a replacement metal roof on the storage structure at the Bowen Island Recycling Depot for an amount not to exceed $51,885 plus taxes. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Just let me get settled here for 1 second. Moving on to no delegations this evening. Item 6, business arising from minutes. 6.1, active transportation network plan development and additional traffic data collection from our Director of Engineering, Mr. Graham.
Okay. Hello, everybody, Mayor and Council. So the point of this report is to provide an update on the active transportation network plan development, which is underway. It actually goes back a ways when there was a grant funding application that was approved by council in 2021. The original intent was to use that money for design work, primarily relating to the multi-use path next phase. With further discussion with the grant administrators, it was clear that there was a very specific scope of work that they were expecting in terms of developing an active transportation network plan for the entire municipality. So that's the work we're embarking on now. We've completed a round of public consultation. We've done some data collection and some background research on existing plans and policies that have been in place. And the next phase will be looking at identifying where and what active transportation improvements make the most sense for the island. So this is actually a requirement for some of the active transportation infrastructure grant funding. So it is very important we complete this network plan for that reason as well, including the infrastructure grant that we've recently received to fund construction of the next phase of the multi-use path. So having this plan complete in September of this year will enable us to access that significantly larger amount of funding for multi-use path construction. This is 50% grant funded, and the municipal share is the 29,000 that's indicated in the recommendation. And going back about a month, there was a direction from council to expand the work of this plan to capture additional baseline data through the summer of 2021. What's been done to date has been collecting a minimum of 3 days, weekdays, which are typically higher usage days at a number of sites, at 10 different sites around the island, to support the development of the active transportation network plan. And I'll just show a slide on that in a minute. Actually, I will, I'll bring that up now. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So these are the locations where the data was collected. Essentially, all of the major routes that, including the main route across the island and the routes that branching off of that, there was tube style data collectors installed for the 3-day periods that they rotated throughout the sites. And this is just showing traffic volumes and average speeds for the monitoring period. And really that's to look at, there are some active transportation and bicycle facility design guidelines that relate to these types of volume and speed numbers, so that to provide some direction for the report and the plan. So we did go back to the consultants and get a price from them for installing data collection at these sites, at these same sites for the summer, from the beginning of July to Labor Day, essentially. And the cost is $20,000. That's just for the collection of the data itself and periodic checking of the installations of the monitoring equipment for the summer. That doesn't do anything with the data. That's more just data. If we wanted to do some analysis of the data in the future, presumably we'd want to collect a similar period of data for probably an approximately similar cost, and then some sort of analysis to reach whatever conclusions it is that we're targeting. In looking at our capital priorities, there's not an imminent need to collect this data. It's the reason we're not recommending that we proceed with this expenditure. There are other data collection expenditures that might be more in line with what our immediate needs are. For example, we do need to purchase some equipment, such as the equipment the consultants used in this case, that will allow us to actually implement our speed control policy. The first step in that policy is where speed controls requested or recommended for a particular neighborhood is to collect some data, and we haven't had any success getting current equipment working or functional, and so that needs to be addressed. And there's many other capital requirements. So it's not that it's not useful to have data. It's just that there's no particular driving need for it in this case. So what we're recommending is that certainly we proceed with the active transportation network plan and completing that, and we hold off on the additional data collection at those sites around the island.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Any questions for the director? Councillor Morse?
Yeah, a couple of sort of confusion type questions. They've referenced on ISL's list of duties under the background report, review of Metro Vancouver's 2050 regional growth strategy. We're not part of the regional growth strategy for Metro, so I don't know why they would review it. And Metro has a much more relevant plan, which is their Greenway strategy, which they should be reviewing, which that has the path right across the island on their Greenway strategy. So I think that would be better to, review. And I'm just out of curiosity, what's a Strava heat map?
Well, to your first question, they did review. They reviewed a broad range of plans that were developed by Bowen, as well as other jurisdictions, including the regional Greenway strategy. And a Strava heat map it's an app that people have on their phones that they track their routes that they take, and you can sign up for Strava, or even if you're not subscribed to Strava, you can see that by the relative darkness of the lines, the relative quantity of people that take certain routes that are using this app. And it's typically hikers, bikers. So it provides some insight into where people go on their bikes.
Okay. And then the next question, in looking at, they're talking about surveys. We've, I think, asked various transportation related questions in the municipal survey we've done of the community. So I'm hoping they have that in their list of things to look at. And then I'm curious as to the development of a proposed active transportation network map. I mean, there was a lot of work done and in the transportation plan, there's three maps. There's a pedestrian network, there's a cycling network, there's the multi-use path network, and there's all sorts of strategies and actions with respect to active transportation. So I'm assuming they're taking all that into consideration. So I'm just curious as to the map. Are they going to just put all three maps together on one map? Or are they going to propose totally different routes?
It's really an expansion of the work that was done in the transportation plan, and certainly that work is feeding into the current plan development. From what I understand, and speaking with staff members who were previously here and more involved with that, there was a desire to make the transportation plan more achievable. So not try and show too much, and it really doesn't encompass the entire island. It really looks more specifically at the highest priority items, and it wasn't really the scope of what we had in the transportation plan didn't line up with what the expectations of the grant funders of what would be in an active transportation network plan, a comprehensive one. So that was the idea, is to expand beyond what was done in the transportation plan to a comprehensive plan for the entire island.
So they're going to build on what was already been mapped out. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Any further questions? Seeing none, I will look for a disposition from council on this item. Councillor Fast?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to move the motion and I'll just speak to it briefly. Now that I have more context, thank you, Patrick. I can see that this is a $29,000 project for the municipal portion, but we'd be looking at an extra $20,000 of extra data costs, and that doesn't include the analysis. So anyway, I'm in favor with the recommendation. I think we need to be taking the climate action. We need to move ahead with the network plan so that we can continue building the multi-use pathway to make transportation more affordable to people who choose to use e-bikes or whatever kinds of alternative ways to get around, so they don't have to use, reduce car dependency. And I think we need to do this in order to get the grant for the next phase of the multi-use pathway. And I support this island-wide initiative. Maybe the new data is a separate project, is what I had down. And so I'm glad to hear that staff are thinking of acquiring the equipment to be able to use it when needed. So I'm going to move that council direct staff to proceed with the development of the active transportation network plan, but not to proceed with the additional traffic data collection through the summer of 2023.
Councillor Geddes, second.
Yes, I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Moving on to item 7.1, application for rezoning 8 Arbutus Bay Road. I will look to our manager of planning and development, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will present in here in council chamber. If council has trouble hearing me, let me know and I can find an alternate space to do it.
You're coming through loud and clear here.
Excellent, thank you. I will just start my screen share. Right. So I'm here today to present an update on bylaw 598, which is about a rezoning application at 8 Arbutus Bay Road. So by way of refresher, council at their February 27th meeting gave first reading to bylaw 598 to bring about this application, referred the bylaw out, and made a series of directions to staff regarding the application. So I will just do a quick overview of the update of some of the items and then come to some recommended amendments to the bylaw. So this bylaw was referred to the APC, who made their motion at their March 14th meeting that they continue to support the application. The Parks, Trails, Greenways Advisory Committee made 2 recommendations regarding public access around the proposed beach at Echo Bay. The Islands Trust Conservancy, when referred this application, declined the opportunity to have the proposed park transferred to their care. So that had been the applicant's desire, was to have the land transferred to this is Islands Trust, but this is the Bowen Island Conservancy that has turned down the opportunity to have the park dedicated to them, and they've provided a letter that's in the report. The applicant provided an updated environmental assessment that identified an additional riparian area on the site, and they've adjusted the site plan accordingly. Council may recall from the February 27th meeting, some neighbors of the application expressed concerns about some aspects of the application. The applicant has held meetings with neighbors on both sides to address concerns and has found a way to move forward to the satisfaction of the neighbors. And then relevant for today's discussion is the meetings we've held with the Housing Advisory Committee. So one of the motions from council was about a formula for calculating a cash in lieu contribution for this application. So rather than providing on-site rental housing, to provide a formula for the cash in lieu option. So the Housing Advisory Committee spent a couple meetings discussing this. They looked at a number of communities and how they calculate a cash in lieu amount. And essentially what they have recommended is a formula for determining the new floor area permitted in a bylaw and then having a contribution amount of $7 a square foot. So there's a formula in their recommendation, but it breaks down essentially, you look at the gross floor area of the proposed amount as the net new above what was permitted under the existing zoning, and you request an amount of $7 a square foot for that additional floor area. So what's shown here, the total contribution of about $113,000 for the bylaw 598 proposal with the 7 lots. And then I will discuss this amended application idea for 9 lots, but you'd see a larger cash contribution amount going to the Affordable Housing Fund. And then the Housing Advisory Committee recommended at their meeting that council amend bylaw 598 to include 2 additional lots in the rezoning. And the Housing Advisory Committee was looking at ways to provide additional diverse housing as part of this or any rezoning application. So they noted that the application at the 7 lot size would provide, larger lots that would be relatively more expensive, and saw this as an opportunity to have the application and the subsequent subdivision create 2 additional smaller lots as part of the subdivision, with the hope being that would provide more diverse forms of housing as part of this subdivision. So the applicant has prepared some drawings showing the revised application and what the impact would be on the subdivision. So as well as this plan also incorporates the additional riparian area and setbacks. So you'll see the road essentially has been reworked to come down more towards the eastern side of the property rather than the northern. And then in this pink area of development towards the north side of the property, which I'll zoom in, shows the creation of 2 smaller lots, number 8 and number 9, as well as the larger number 3 that would have the covenant over the pasture area as well. And then because these lots would be smaller, there'd be a need for a common property having the septic field. So that's what this is shown as, a common septic field to service the 3 lots. And then this is, we've prepared then a bylaw essentially that would create these amended areas. So showing the reworked area to the reworked park area, including the larger park around Echo Bay that the Parks and Trails Greenways Advisory Committee had sought. And so staff have prepared this bylaw should council wish to pursue this amendment from the Housing Advisory Committee. And so if council wishes to follow this alternative, it would require rescinding the first reading that council is given, granting first reading to the amended bylaw, and then again refer the amended application to committees, so the Advisory Planning Commission, the Parks and Trails Greenways Advisory Committee, and to the Islands Trust again for comment on the revision. Or if council does not wish to follow this alternative, then staff would recommend a motion to council just to prepare the bylaw for consideration of second reading. To be clear, council would have considered the referral or the recommendation from the HAC and chose instead to stay with the 7 lot bylaw. So maybe I will stop sharing at that point and take any questions from council.
Councillor Fast, I see your hand up.
Thank you. Yes. I have one question. I'm getting an echo, sorry. My question is, I have two questions actually. The first one is on page 7 of 9. I have a question that relates to the standard 7.5 meters. I think it might be a setback comment, but there was some words seem to be missing there. This is the third paragraph from the bottom of page 7 of 9. What is the standard 7.5?
Sure, through the CAO to council, you're right, that section of the report has clearly got a fragment sentence, but it refers to the standard 7.5 meter front yard setback that we have. And what this bylaw proposes is to reduce that setback to the road. And the desire of that is to allow the buildings to be sited closer to the road running through the center of the plan and to essentially draw down the development away from the setback to the sea.
To the setback to the sea. So this means not towards the road, but towards the sea? Is that the
So let me come back here. All right. So where the road comes through the center, especially it was lot 6 and 7, where the concern was that a 7.5 meter setback from lot 7 would make the house essentially enter closer to the sea and closer to that coastal shoreline covenant. And so the move instead was to reduce the setback for the front lot line to the lot common with the road to essentially to allow more space for development to be sited further from the sea.
Oh, okay, thank you. I thought it must be referring to those 2 additional lots because of the way the sentence was. Thank you. So you're talking about lots 6 and 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's for the development as a whole, but that was specifically where the concern came from.
And all lots. Okay, thank you. And my second question relates to the road. I can see that the road going off the property has changed a little bit. And I'm wondering if you can just give me some context in terms of what does it connect to? And are there any implications of the changes to the road? Is it it's still a single lane road, is it?
It would be a road that would meet our subdivision servicing standards, which would, I believe, be a 2-lane road. Or to vary the subdivision servicing standards would be essentially a variance permit application that the applicant could make through the subdivision process. And it would connect with Lindy's Road.
Oh, okay. In the old original road alignment, is that?
Yes, within the dedicated road.
Where it's, okay, great. The road alignment that's actually on the maps. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. I've got some comments later, but I'll turn it over to others.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Any other questions here? Seeing none, I will look for council's disposition on this matter for councillor to propose a disposition on the matter.
Which,
Councillor Morse, since you started.
I was just trying to scroll back through all the pages to read the motion that's in the staff report that the council rescind first reading of bylaw number 598, 2023. But I think Councillor Fast referred to, she had some other comments, so maybe we should hear those first.
Comments, Councillor Fast?
Sure, I'm just in favor of the staff report. I read this carefully, and I've been a longtime friend of Maggie Cumming in her activity on Bowen as a supporter of greenways and that kind of thing. I think the net result will be Maggie's Park and the trail with beach access and the covenant on the foreshore, and the donation will be a positive thing for the island wide. Also, I think you can do nature and density, And for full disclosure, there's 10% of the residue in Maggie's arrangement with the Bowen Island in her will with the foundation goes to support greenways. And I just think it was a complete report. I understand the reasons for it. And so I'd like to move the motion.
And I'll second it.
I'm going to read it out just so everybody knows. That council rescind first reading of bylaw number 598 to 2023. That council amend bylaw number 598 2023 to include 2 additional residential lots in area 2. That council read bylaw number 598 2023 as amended, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57 2020 02, amendment bylaw number 562 2023. How did that 562 get in there? Just have a quick question. Why am I reading?
It looks like Councillor Fast, you would read 598 instead of 562.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, 598, 2023. And that council refer amended bylaw number 598 to the Islands Trust, the Advisory Planning Commission, the Housing Advisory Committee, the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, and that council require the applicant to update the neighbors on the updated status of their application prior to consideration of second reading.
All right, it's been moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion on the main motion here? Councillor Getty?
I had a chance to read all of the staff report as well, and I also have confidence in the neighbors and the people that are the Cummings family in terms of, I'm happy to hear that they've worked out some solutions to their concerns, and I have confidence that they will be good. They'll help us figure this out if there's any difficulty. So I don't have any difficulty with this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Getty.
Mayor Leonard, I just have one item. I just wanted to, there was just some words missing from section 3 of the recommendation, and it's that we're reading bylaw number 598 2023 a first time. So I just wanted to clarify that before it's voted on.
Thank you. I'll say that council read bylaw number 598 2023 as amended a first time, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57 2020 2002, amendment bylaw number 598 2023.
Okay, any objections to that addition? All right, and that's adopted by unanimous consent. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And I'd just like to thank the Advisory Planning Commission, the Housing Advisory Committee, and the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee on this one. I mean, I think this is a great example of 3 committees working together to come to common purpose and shape a project to a better end. So thank you for everybody's work on that. Moving on to item 8.1 in staff reports, section 57 notice on title at 484 Sunset Road. I will hand it over to our corporate officer if there is a presentation or if you'd like to provide any information to council.
There's no presentation, but I will just give a quick recap of the staff report. So this is a recommendation that council place a notice on the title of property that's in contravention of the building bylaw number 65, 2002. I just want to note that Greg Cormier, our building inspector, is present here at the meeting on Zoom in case you have any questions about the contraventions. Just some background as written in my report is that bylaw services and the building inspector have investigated unpermitted construction of accessory buildings on the property. It is in a development permit area. The property owner has been instructed on multiple occasions to apply for the necessary permits, and stop work orders have been ignored. There is a court injunction in effect to enforce the stop work orders, and the next step in enforcement is to place a notice on title. So section 57 of the community charter allows that council may place a notice on the title. This serves as a warning on the registered title of the property that unpermitted construction has taken place, and this will impede the property owner from being able to obtain financing or to sell or transfer the property. So in accordance with provisions in the charter, I did provide notice to the property owners by registered mail and as a courtesy by email as well, and suggested 2 opportunities for the property owner to appear before council to explain their position, and I have had no response. As such, in this circumstance, we're recommending that council do place a notice on title.
Thank you for that. Any questions for the corporate officer? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover of a recommendation here. Councillor Wake?
I'll make the motion. Why am I not seeing it here? The council direct the corporate officer to file notice in the land title office in accordance with section 57(1)(b) of the community charter against the title of 484 Sunset Road, legally described as Lot B, Block C, Plan LMP 4859, District Lot 492, PID 017793475, disclosing that an accessory building on the property is in contravention of the Bowen Island Municipality Building Law number 65, 2002.
So moved by Councillor Wake. For a second. Seconded by Councillor Morris. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. Item 8.2, introduction to development variance permit at 834 Captain's Way. Back again is our manager of planning and development to say a few words on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a development variance permit we are introducing at 834 Captain's Way. This is an existing single-family house that was developed in the 1970s. And this property, as is common on some places, especially on Captain's Way, has a strip of land between the property and the border to the sea that's owned by the Crown, often referred to as the Crown Strip. And this property has existing encroachment into that Crown Strip land of a deck, both an upper and a lower deck. The decks on this house are nearing the end of life. You'll see photos in the report. I don't have them on the presentation, but the applicant is looking to replace those decks with decks that are structurally sound. And in that reconfiguration of their decks are looking to include a new door to access the lower deck and stairway, shown here in green on the north side of the house, and then a small deck extension on the west side of the house, as well as then removal of the decks that encroach into the Crown Strip land. So the applicant is requesting the required setback be varied, reduced to be 24 meters to the sea, 1.32 meters to the side lot line. That's from this green deck and stairway on this side, and then 4.9 meters to the rear property line for this deck extension and for this deck extension. That's just a closer up view showing that the expansion on this side and on this side, and then the removal of the decks that encroach. Notice was sent to properties within 100 meters of this property, and the applicant did provide letters of support from the immediate neighbors to the north and the south that are included in your on-table package. And so the staff recommendation is that council give notice that they will be considering this variance permit at the July 24th meeting of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any questions for the planner on this one? Councillor Fast?
I think I missed in here, where the recommendation is that we give notice to properties in how many meters? I missed that part.
100 meters.
Okay. And should we put that in the recommendation, or is that just staff policy now? Because I don't see it in the recommendation that's in front of us. My question was, where, how far away?
Right, 100 meters is the amount in our procedure bylaw, so that would be our standard.
Okay. And you've already obviously reached out. Okay, thank you. I'll move the motion.
Okay.
So that notice be given that council will be considering the issuance of development variance permit DVP 2022-0226 for the variance of side, rear, and C setbacks for 834 Captain's Way, legally described as Lot C, Block C, District Lot 3042, Plan 14029, PID 007-956-886 at the July 24th, 2023 meeting of council, and that council authorize staff to give notice for the consideration of issuance of development variance permit DVP 2022-0226 for the variance of side, rear, and C setbacks for 834 Captain's Way, legally described as Lot C, Block C, District Lot 3042, Plan 14029, PID 007-956-886. Over.
Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Fast?
Just that I'm happy to see this application to regularize where the decks are and how they fit on the property, and that the encroachment onto Crown property is being pulled back. And now I understand about why they need the extra green part for stairs and a little bit of extension there. I'm in support. This seems to me to be making things better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. Item 8.3, introduction to development variance permit, 1033 Miller Road, which is the Birch project. Over again to Mr. Martin, our Manager of Planning and Development.
Thank you. So as the mayor said, this is a development variance permit at 1033 Miller Road. So it's located here immediately behind the future home of the Bowen Island Health Center and adjacent to the Bowen Island Fire Hall, on land still owned by the Bowen Island municipality, that we have an agreement to lease the land to Birch to provide an affordable housing project. So the variance application before you today has two proposed variances. So the first is to increase the height of the building to a height of 13.29 meters. So the building is shown here, will appear as a 3-story building fronting the health center, and then as a 4-story building fronting the park. So with the change in grade, it allows an additional floor on that far side. And then the application is to reduce the required parking on site from 24 spaces to 10 spaces. So you see here the site plan and just the overall layout of the building, and then the parking essentially stripped from access from this common easement between the Birch project and the health center project. And then along here, the southern edge is covered bicycle parking for the tenants of the building. And just the note in the report is about the fire department's concerns about the height of the building. So the fire department notes that the maximum height that they're able to serve and reach safely with their ladders. And so the fire department wanted that concern noted, but noted there may be potential alternate solutions proposed to address that concern. And so staff have included a condition in the variance permit that either the height of essentially the distance to provide egress, so from the top of a railing or a window, be reduced to the maximum height they can serve, or there be an alternative solution as part of the building permit process. And as a way to enable this variance to move forward, should council be comfortable with the overall height and impact of the height of the building, that an alternative solution can be put forward to address those specific concerns, but enable Birch to proceed with planning for their variance and their grant applications. So as of writing of this presentation, we've received 24 letters of support. I believe we've received a couple more since then, and those include a letter from the health center, which is the immediate neighbor. So the recommendation would be that council give notice they would be considering this development variance permit at the July 24th meeting of council to vary the parking and height of the building.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any questions or discussion for the planner or on this item? No? Oh, sorry, Councilor Fast, do you have your hand up?
Sure. I just have a quick question. This all seems like good thinking to me. My question is the bicycle parking, which I support. Would this also be sized enough to take cargo bikes, like the longer bikes that you can fit a couple of children behind, or whatever you're carrying?
I don't know offhand, but I can inquire before this came for consideration.
Okay, I think that's a fine tuning detail. I just wanted to let people know that I've seen people riding their e-bikes with two kids behind them, and the bikes are bigger, heavier, a little bit wider and longer. So I just wanted to flag that. And otherwise, I'm in favor. I think I never understood why there needed to be that much parking in the first place when there's transit there, and the new multi-use pathway runs past, and the Bowen Lift hitchhiking is there, and walkable to the ferry. All those things, I think it will help it be more affordable for people and for the society. So I'm in favor, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fast. Councilor Getty? Might be on mute, Councilor Getty.
Sorry. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, there, I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, so I'm in favor of this motion, but I want Birch and any of the other people involved to take the concerns of the department very seriously. So if we don't have equipment that is going to get to the top floor from the back, then that's it's not acceptable. Went through this years ago in terms of them being overheight, building up at Artisan Square at one point, and it's just it just feels wrong for me to be allowing a building to go ahead if it's unsafe for the people that are living on the top floor. So they have to be able to have some sort of a something worked out with the fire department in terms of safety of the people that would be renting on the top floor.
Thank you, Councilor Getty. Councilor Wake.
Yeah, echoing earlier comments, I'm happy to see the parking reduction. I think this is happening in a lot of jurisdictions where we're trying not to encourage more car use and trying to encourage alternatives. So I have no problem with that. As to the issue with fire protection, I think the report makes it quite clear that it'll have to be sprinklered. There'll have to be other measures in there. And in fact, that's what's utilized in many jurisdictions where buildings are higher than the fire department can reach with a ladder. So I'm comfortable that if the fire chief is okay with what we've said here, and they'll look at alternatives. I support this. I think we've got to keep moving forward.
Thank you, Councilor Wake. Miley, I guess my question is just around parking in the Cove generally. I know that we had that rental building go up and it had reduced parking, and we're looking at the Birch project now with reduced parking. Is there any concerns from staff in regards to, well, and then we're having the community center go in as well. Are there concerns from staff in regards to long-term parking solutions or strategy, or even short-term at this point, parking solutions or strategies in the Cove on this project?
Broadly, I think, yes, like concern about parking in the Cove. Yes, very definitely. I mean, in sort of short order, we've developed in the Cove over some of the existing or the long-standing commuter parking that has been available in Snug Cove. And we are seeing, impacts of that. The bylaw department has noted concerns with that. One of the pieces that we've flagged with this development, I'll share my screen here, is essentially the area to the south of where the health center is, where it says 1029 Miller, is currently being used as the laydown area for the health center. They've got permission from the municipality to use that space as part of their construction. And we may see the same thing happen with the construction of Birch, is they would again be looking for area to house construction material. Following that though, or in between, if there's a period between the health center opening and Birch starting construction, that would sort of remain as the most logical location in the Cove for additional parking to be provided. We have an outstanding motion from council as well to consider, parking needs in Snug Cove. And that does seem like the most logical space that we have available. So it is sort of a challenge that we face as staff, is that knowing that many of our plans and policies are around how do we sort of minimize car use and encourage alternate forms of transportation, but knowing that one of the goals is to have more, foot passengers walk onto the ferry and commute that way. We found in the past having commuter parking in the Cove is valuable, and then as well as the desire for sort of short-term parking in the Cove as well is an issue.
Thank you. And I see our CAO and CFO's hands up, so I'll look to Mr. Edwards first, and then Ms. Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. I also saw Councillor Wake's hand up, so I think he might have been before me. I'm not sure, but a couple of points that I wanted to make through the chair was that, and I don't necessarily have concerns with the reduced parking numbers for the Birch project itself, but I do want to note that we have noticed increased parking challenges in the Cove with the more recent apartment building that was developed on Trunk Road, and that our bylaw officers are called to take more action, likely as a result of that building. And so we're likely to see this become more of a challenge for us, and we do need to look at some possible solutions. One concern that I do have, though, with the Birch project, if it does go ahead with that reduced parking amount, is to be absolutely clear and certain that tenants wouldn't use the fire hall lot for their parking. It's right adjacent to it. It'd be very tempting. And so that's something that we would have to be working in partnership with Birch on to ensure that it doesn't fall into practice to just use the fire hall as the parking location.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Watson.
Thank you. Yes, just to follow up on the CAO's comments, wearing my bylaw hat here, I do want to just confirm that we have received a significant increase in parking conflict in the Cove, specifically around the apartment building. The previous council did receive a letter from the owner asking for specific designated resident only spots, because there is a significant amount of difficulty for their residents to find parking in that building, which also received a parking variance to reduce the number of spots. We are seeing conflicts with our construction project with, we believe, cars parked in the construction access corridor now at the moment. So it definitely is going to create and exacerbate an already difficult problem of parking in the Cove. So definitely solutions. I think Planner Martin did indicate that it is probably a good idea to look at that additional space on lot 3 to start considering the development of a municipal parking lot, paid parking lot.
Thank you. Councillor Fast.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to point out that we need to take climate action. I think everybody understands that. Lot 3, that L-shaped lot, I'm looking at the one with the proposed septic location on it as well, seems like it could serve to also park people's private vehicles if they have them. My North Vancouver has built a rental building. I believe it was an affordable rental building now that has no parking required. And I think that's the direction that we should be going in. This is valuable municipal land. And I think we need it for this affordable housing project more than we need it for free parking for people's vehicles when there's alternatives available. So I'm in support of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Wake.
Thank you. Just to get back to or a little more on the parking, we're going to face this parking problem with both commuter parking and resident parking and visitor parking moving forward, just through the growth of the island, even if we don't have a significant growth in visitor numbers. So I guess on the plus side, the sooner we can develop really viable, workable alternatives, shuttles, on-demand shuttles, improved transit, more frequent transit, and we can shift the patterns so that people start to use that. And the multi-use path will help with cycling to the Cove. The e-bike rental shop is going to offer a service to install winter tires on bikes, on e-bikes, so people can start commuting year-round on their bikes. So there's lots of alternatives that don't necessarily speak to us right now, but they will look more attractive as we run into more of a shortage of parking. And in effect, I think that creating more parking isn't going to solve that problem.
Thank you, Councillor Wake. Councillor Fast.
One more point, just to add to Councillor Wake's excellent comments. I have a Modo car co-op membership. I've been a member for years of this car share program. There are two, and I've been and booked cars that are over in Nanaimo and other places, and I walk up to these affordable housing projects, and that's where the Modo car lives. I can book it too, but it has a home at the affordable housing project or somewhere on the street, like near the ferry terminal. In fact, there are two that live behind Trolls in Horseshoe Bay, and I sometimes use those. It helps to avoid taking a vehicle onto the ferry, sitting in the lineup, and the expense associated with that, as well as leaving more room for everybody. That might be an option too. I just want to flag another alternative for transportation that might work for people if they're only going to use a car once in a while, or maybe a couple of times a week. That could work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. And it seems, if I was just to sum up the parking issue a little bit, because it feels like an issue. It feels like a hot topic issue that needs to be resolved, but it's starting to feel a little farther afield than Birch's mandate. But I think the onus here is going to be on council and municipality to sort out some of the parking issues in the Cove, given the development pressures that we're facing. And I don't necessarily think that it's Birch's problem to solve, but it's our job to strategically fashion the support systems that are going to lead to the success of projects like these. So unless there's any more discussion, I'll look for a motion on this matter. Councillor Getty.
I'll read the recommendation.
Okay.
Just one more comment. That notice be given that council will be considering the issuance of a development variance permit DVP 2023-0082 for the variance of parking and height for 1033 Miller Road, legally described as Lot 3, District Lot 490, Group 1, New Westminster District Plan, EPP 98055, PID 031-247-652 at the July 24th, 2023 meeting of council. Further, that council authorized staff to give notice for the consideration of issuance of a development variance permit, DVP 2023-0082, for the variance of parking and height for 1033 Miller Road, legally described as Lot 3, District Lot 490, Group 1, New Westminster District Plan, EPP 98055, PID 031-247-652.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. I'd also like to make a motion as a bit of a housekeeping motion that we refer this to the Advisory Planning Commission for information.
Do you want a
Seconder?
motion? Sure.
No, I'll make the motion, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion on just a referral for information? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Item 8.3A, without objection, we'll receive the letters from the public. DVP 2023-0082 received June 19th to June 26th, 2023. Just unanimous consent. Is there any objections to doing that? None.
Can I just make-
Those letters are, yes, Councillor Getty.
Just kudos to Birch for having stick handled this through to this point.
Mm.
This is a lot of hard work showing up.
And it has been a lot of hard work. I know the path has not always been easy, so whatever we can do to support. Item 8.4, multi-use path alignment options. To our Director of Engineering, Mr. Graham, or no, and yeah, Mr. Graham and Natasha Chung, our community planner. Either of those folks here.
I think we're a little bit ahead of schedule. Can I?
Patrick's here.
Yeah, Patrick's
Okay.
online, but it just may
right.
be not.
I'm going to step away for 2 minutes. Excuse me.
So maybe what we'll do is look for a motion to lay this. So without objection, and we'll do this by unanimous consent. Without objection, we'll lay item 8.4, the multi-use path alignment options, on the table until Mr. Graham is present.
Good plan.
Seeing none, that carries, and we'll move to item
8.4.
as well. But I think it's 8.5, our CAO update from Mr. Edwards.
Right, and given the nature of the Zoom meeting and the time zone differences, I didn't have an update for council this evening, so.
The only item I'm curious on, and it came up at the last meeting, is just an update regarding the trailer at the works yard and how that is advancing.
Yes, and I asked our Director of Engineering for that, but I don't have an update on that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the CAO? Councilor Getty?
Mr. Edwards, have you had an update from the province with respect to their monitoring of Apodaca?
With their monitoring, can you expand on that?
I thought that we were going to ask them to what their monitoring procedures were, and if necessary, if we thought it would be better, try to persuade them to increase it.
Yeah, their monitoring procedures is pretty minor, perhaps in some eyes, but for them, it's pretty standard where they visit the site on about a monthly basis and or on an as needed basis.
All right. Is that something that could be referred to Parks and Trails and see whether or not there's or any resources in the community to, I'm sure that the neighbors would be, you know, perhaps get some training so it's not into any kind of confrontation, but I'm sure they'd be interested in helping with monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
That wasn't me. Sorry, having the neighbors be part of a monitoring program?
Could this be referred to, I don't know, Parks and Trails, I would think would be our committee to see whether or not there's a community response to increase monitoring without it being left up to the province to have somebody casually show up once a month. I'm not
Sorry,
sure.
I'm not sure what we're discussing. If somebody could just.
Apodaca and the monitoring
Oh,
of that camping on the park, and
Oh.
in particular the fires.
It's definitely council's prerogative to refer it to a council committee if they choose to do so. And or council can make a request to direct staff to request a increase or change to the monitoring schedule that BC Parks provides.
I see Councillor Fast. Oh, sorry, Councillor Getty, did you have a
No,
follow-up?
go ahead.
Thanks. Now that I know what we're talking about, I will note that the terms of reference for the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee exclude any kind of watchdog function. They in the past have been accused of being a watchdog function, but that's never been part of what their role is. And I think it's important to keep their unbiased sort of advice to council rather than becoming an active. Well, we could look at changing the terms of reference if that's something. I like the CAO's advice or suggestion there, though, that we could request the province's recreation sites, BC, whatever they're called, to monitor more frequently, because they've already had an issue, and it's a new use of that property, and I think it's better for them to be monitoring. Another alternative would be to ask the kayak groups that use the site to copy us on any remarks or things that they send to the province. But I think we should just approach the province first and ask them to monitor more carefully and adjust as required for to reduce fire risk.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Morse?
I was more or less along the same lines. I don't think we should be asking citizens to monitor, and none of the houses are very close to that park. I mean, they're not going to be able to see things just from their decks or anything. They'd have to walk in, and you don't want them doing that in confrontations. I would like a formal response from BC Parks as to what their practice is, or their with respect to monitoring for campgrounds. And once we know that, then we can ask them to provide more. I mean, it is on an island, and it's where it's difficult to reach, and it's not accessible by air, and it's a volunteer fire department. So and it's not accessible by, other roads or other communities. So I don't know what else there is around that's similar, given the fire they've got over in the North Shore with the White Lake area. I think we should be concerned, but I'd like to know formally from BC Parks or Recreation Sites and Trails, whichever division it is, just what their monitoring practice is. If it's just to go in and clean up the garbage, then that's maybe not acceptable.
Okay.
All right, so then I would like to move that we direct staff to request a formal response from BC Parks, the appropriate department, in terms of what their level of supervision or monitoring is at this point.
I'm unfortunately going to rule that motion out of order, as it is a piece of new business that's not on our agenda. So it should be,
Okay.
Okay.
we're at the CAO update right now, so that should come as a notice of motion. That can be put on our next agenda.
Okay.
And then that also, I mean, the benefit is that it gives us some time to get really sharp about our language and what we're looking at. And then particularly with the discussion from Councillors Getty and Fast, maybe if the two of you had a conversation, if you want to ping me on it, we can come up with some solid wording for what it is we want to ask the province for.
Yeah, and Mayor, if I may,
Yep.
I just don't have that information right at my fingertips here, but BC Parks has provided that information, and so it's easy to circulate that amongst council after this meeting when I'm able to pull it up, and then that'll help inform council about whether there's a desire to make a motion to try to request an amendment to their standard of practice.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Any questions for the CAO, just given that we're in the CAO update? Councillor Wake.
Yeah, on the issue of fire, I think the event today at White Lake was very instructive, and it was reassuring to see 6 water bombers out there cycling, and over a period of a couple of hours, it went from a ton of smoke coming out of there to hardly any. And I'm just wondering if we would be able to get the same kind of response if we had a similar situation on the island, because if those kinds of resources can be deployed in short order as they were today, that certainly brings some comfort.
Thank you, Councillor Wake. Okay, and I see that our Director of Engineering was in frame a second ago. He is back in frame now. So without objection, we will take item 8.4 from the table, the multi-use path alignment options. Any objection to doing that?
No.
Seeing none, that carries by unanimous consent, and I will hand it over to our Director of Engineering.
You're mute.
Oh, still can't hear you.
Okay, that should work now.
There we go.
Okay. So this is bringing back the multi-use path to provide an update on where we're at, and most importantly, to get council approval on preferred alignment, which will allow us to move forward with next steps in constructing the next phase. I will just share my screen, and just got a short presentation with a few slides. So going back to 2022, there was a review of multiple alignment options done in consultation with ISL. That was brought before council. There was a council site visit to walk the preferred alignment, and what was preferred at the time was where the current path ends at Artisan Lane. So there's about 1.4 kilometers of path that we've constructed to date, starting from Cardina up to Artisan Lane, to carry on from there with an off-road alignment. It's shown in yellow and purple there. It's actually, the alignment would be quite a bit closer to the road than what is shown here and further from the creek. But in general, it's an offline alignment through the ravine, the upper part of the ravine. And then there's an option to climb back up to Grafton Road, which we'll be talking about today, or to carry on down towards Terminal Creek to cross near the Charlie's Lane Bridge and then follow Connolly Creek. So this squiggly part here is essentially the right along the edge of Connolly Creek. And then this is an old orthophoto because there's a water treatment plant there now. It would be past the water treatment plant and then down that road to join up with Grafton Lake, or with Grafton Road. So at the time, that was the preference of council. Staff has done some additional investigation and design work and studies, and really have a number of concerns with that alignment, which we'll go through in a little more detail, and are recommending that instead we carry on with the proposed off-road route up to Charlie's Lane, but rather than going down into the Terminal Creek Valley and then following Connolly Creek to come back up to Grafton Road. So we currently have design work underway for the next phase from Artisan up to Charlie's Lane. We have approximately 1.6 million available in the 2023 and 2024 budgets to build that section. That's over 74% of that is grant funding through BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant. Some leftover funds from the ICIP COVID resiliency grant that we used to build the Cardina section, and as well as some TransLink funding. And it's about a 600 meter section. It's probably the most one of the most challenging sections along the whole route. Just to clarify, the first 430 meters or so of that alignment would be the same regardless of the decision on alignment that we'll be making today. As you get about 150 meters away from Charlie's Lane, this is Charlie's Lane here and the Charlie's Lane Bridge, they would diverge. One option would drop down towards the river and join essentially the water main, the alignment that the water main from Grafton Lake takes. The other would climb up to back up to Grafton Road and follow Grafton Road on the red alignment for the rest of the route. So in terms of recommending the multi-use path alignment follow Grafton Road past Charlie's Lane rather than the alignment following Connolly Creek, it's outlined in a lot more detail in the staff report, but a big factor is that it's less costly. It's close to 50% less costly. There's less environmental impact. There's less path construction in the riparian areas of Terminal Creek and Connolly Creek. There's less right-of-way acquisition required. It is a shorter route. And there are also some other concerns with the Connolly Creek alignment, including some strong opposition from some property owners. The safety of Charlie's Lane and the interface between Charlie's Lane and multi-use path users. Charlie's Lane is a steep road on both sides that, especially in bad weather, residents have told us that it can be very sketchy to navigate, and the thought of sharing, any or part of that road with pedestrians and bikes is just an accident waiting to happen. There's also private wells along that Connolly Creek alignment that there was some concern about the security of those wells expressed. There's also the issue of having a multi-use path, a public path adjacent to the water treatment plant and utilities yard, and the security issues associated with that. The main driver and the main advantage of the Connolly Creek alignment, and this is what captured the imagination of the previous council, is an enhanced user experience of having more of that path be off-road. But another issue with having an off-road path is, even if that route is there, you're still going to have bikes and pedestrians and non-motorized users along Grafton Road, either because they access from from Kate's Hill Road, or they just don't take the path, and Grafton Road would still remain unsafe for those users. So that was another issue. So that's just a condensed version of the various factors that are leading to a recommendation to rejoin Grafton Road past Charlie's Lane. And maybe I'll just turn it over to questions from there.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Questions or comments for the Director of Engineering? Councillor Fast.
Thank you.
Councillor Wake.
Thanks very much. Through the chair, Director Graham, my question is about the amount of climbing cyclists would need to do in these two options. Thank you for your report. It all seems very clear to me. I can see lots of good reasons here. And I'm just wondering, with the red line, would there be less dipping down and then having to climb back up on the multi-use path, or would the Connolly one be more level overall, if you know?
Yeah, there would be, like, the first section from Artisan through the Terminal Creek Ravine. There would be some steep slopes to navigate in either case, and there is a climb back up to Grafton Road on the alignment that we're recommending. And from there, it's fairly flat along Grafton Road. The Connolly Creek alignment does drop down into the Terminal Creek Valley, and it does climb back up, but more gradually. So you do have more overall elevation gain for the Connolly Creek alignment. A lot of that would be not as steep. It's probably, overall, it's pretty similar.
Thank you. And that probably answers my question. Now I'm realizing I just need to check in with you. I'm looking at the map with the many colored lines. And today, your recommendation that's on this sheet describes the red line. Would that be correct? Or could you point out?
It's essentially purple to orange to red.
Thank you.
But
Okay.
the purple line is closer to Grafton Road than what is shown on here.
Okay.
And so the more detailed drawings that were included with the agenda package shows a more accurate representation of what that next section would look like.
Okay, so purple, yellow to red. There,
Purple,
okay.
orange to purple, orange to red.
Oh, I see it, orange
Yeah.
over there. I can see it better. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I've got comments, but I'll yield.
Okay, Councillor Wake and then Councillor Morse.
Thank you. Mr. Graham, I'm a little confused here. You said clearly that, actually, first of all, are we considering in this next phase just doing the purple or the purple and the orange?
We would be considering doing the purple and the orange.
Okay. So
Otherwise, you have a path that doesn't go anywhere and nobody can use. Right.
Okay, well, I heard the comment. I was already wondering about having the multi-use path right on sharing it with Charlie's Lane. How wide is Charlie's Lane, and would the multi-use path be on the edge of it, or would it be right on top of it?
This was the concept design that was prepared by ISL. It essentially shows, it's assuming you were doing the Connolly Creek route, you would go down, this is Terminal Creek over here, and you would cross at the Charlie's Lane Bridge. You know, in terms of phasing, you'd have to come back to you'd have to come out back up to the road somehow until you build the next phase. But I think what we, in talking with the residents, the people who use this road, it is only about 3 meters wide. And it's very steep on both sides of the bridge. And, you know, well, when I was talking to some of the residents, there was vehicles that came up and down, and you could really see that, you know, that going up or down, it's very difficult to stop, you know, and there's real concern. I don't think we would want to have the path sharing Charlie's Lane along any section. What we're proposing is this route that climbs back up to the road, and you know, there would have to be some serious thought into the actual crossing of Charlie's Lane. We may have to realign that road to create a bit of a flatter area that the trail can safely cross. Because right now, even if you cross, you see vehicles coming up Charlie's Lane, it's quite steep, and even when the weather isn't that bad, they have to keep going. They have to keep their speed up and get really right up onto the flat part beside Grafton Road before they can sort of stop and look for traffic. So we really need to ensure that there's a safe crossing. I think with this, sharing the bridge is a safety hazard that is just too much of a hazard. You know, hence the need for a separate bridge. And if we were going to cross Terminal Creek here and follow up Connolly Creek, we would need to have a separate path that's separated from Charlie's Lane and a bridge that's separate from Charlie's Lane. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, actually, that reassures me, because I didn't realize this red route was separate from Charlie's Lane. I thought it was on it. So, but the next question is, how much vertical and how steep is it going to be in that section? Because that's a fair elevation gain over a short distance, is it not?
I
think it said 18% in the.
Well, this Charlie's Lane is 18%. There would be sections. This is actually fairly flat in here. There's probably about a 12% section, followed by a, you know, 5 or 6, and then it flattens out. So it's really the whole way from Artisan up to Charlie's Lane, there are some shorter sections that get up to 12%. And that's really, it's really difficult to achieve anything less than that. Just because of the terrain. There are some, the alignment through there is really driven by avoiding some key locations where you don't want to be on top or across or under certain slopes, and just trying to steer away from those slopes leads to an alignment that's feasible to construct.
Okay, so other than crossing Charlie's Lane above the bridge and just before it get onto Grafton Road, other than that crossing, it's never, the path is always separate from Charlie's Lane. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
there would just be one crossing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any chance, I'm not completely familiar with the topography in there, but is there any chance for that crossing to be a tunnel?
Well, you know, if we can't make a safe crossing, that obviously adds a substantial expense. But if we're not able to design a safe crossing at grade, then, you know, then you're looking at some sort of tunnel or bridge over it, over or under. Yeah, so that is that might be, and that would add to the cost of the project. I think in any case, you need to cross Charlie's Lane somehow, and it needs to be safe.
Okay, and one last question. I believe in earlier versions of options for this, there was talk of making a cut on the other side of the road and moving Grafton Road over to the east a little bit so that the path could run right down along Grafton Road, but separate. But I understand that was rejected because of cost. But if this other route is going to start costing a lot more, I just wonder if it wouldn't be worthwhile going back and looking at that, and considering the cost, consider the cost of, you know, there'll be a cost of blasting, but that blasting will also create rock, and you're going to need some fair bit of rock to build sections of this. So have the engineers taken that into account in this latest go round?
Yeah, we have looked at that and I guess more at the Class D level, and the cost of that option is, you know, is higher. You know, it is something we could look at in more detail, because I think that's what you would be doing if you're going to keep the route along Grafton Road, is you would have to keep the existing top of bank and move the road inward. And certainly there are sections that involve a fair amount of blasting. I'm not sure what the need for that rock would be, whether it could be reused in other parts of the project. I think it definitely would be more costly, and you would be getting into some substantial property acquisition with that option as well. Really, all of the property owners along the along the east side of, on the southeast side of Grafton Road would have to acquire land from, property from.
Okay, thank you.
To the CAO.
You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Adding to the comments from the Director of Engineering through the chair, and Patrick, please correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, we did have some initial discussions with some of the property owners, and there wasn't a lot of positive traction there for acquiring access around that first corner if you're coming up from the cove. And the road right of way is very minimal around that corner, so there's not a lot of municipally owned road right of way before we would need to secure land from private landowners.
Yeah, the property owner on the corner, we have had discussions with in a previous iteration of the multi-use path when this was originally being considered as a possible phase one, and he was very clearly not interested in parting with the portion of his property that we would need, which is not to say that it can't be done. It's just another obstacle.
Councillor Morse?
Okay, so looking at your report, Patrick, towards I'm on the agenda notes one, so it's the charts with the starts out with the ISL chart with all the nice colors, red, green, and whatever. So on the red green one on the first page, it says option 3A, diverge at Artisan Lane down towards the creek to water main crossing, from water main crossing. So is that what we're doing? 3 and 3.1 and 3.2, is that what you're recommending?
Hang on here. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
I want to make sure I give you the right one.
It's the 3 colored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially it's
That's the purple, orange, and sort of reddish.
Yeah. Purple, orange, and then the remaining red.
Okay.
Is what I'm recommending.
And so you are going to go all the way down to the water main or not?
No.
Okay, so then so it's modified of that then. And
It
then
is
I'm
modified, yeah.
So I'm going forward a couple of pages and there's another ISL drawing. And it says Bone Island Multi-Use Path Phase 2, grant submission October 2022. And it's got a dotted line, which is pretty close to the road. So is that more or less what we're going to be building?
Yes, that's more or less that's more or less what would be
Okay, and then there's cost estimates. There's a whole bunch of detailed engineering drawings for the engineers in our group there with grades and everything. So, okay. So it's pretty close to the road looking at, all right. I was just trying to sort of clarify. So option 3, knowing how much I like dollars, it seems to add up on the net on going through further in those ISL to something that says partial option. Yeah, so you've got to add the 3.1 and 3.2 and 3.11 all together.
Yeah.
So 3A is 578, 3B is 291, and then 3.2 is 1.235. So the whole thing.
So I've added those up in the report.
So that's the total you've got in your report then.
Yeah, so option 3, adding all those up, that's the 3.148.
Okay, all right. And then in your report itself, under financial implications, you've got multi-use path funding sources. And at the bottom, you've got a 2023 total and TBC is to be confirmed? Or are those all?
Well, that's more to be confirmed if that's the amount to be spent in 2023 versus 2024, right?
So it's the spending year, not the amount of the grant.
All of the grants have been confirmed except the 2024 allocated TransLink funding. That part we're just guessing it would be 200,000.
Okay, so the TBC that's there is nothing to do with the grant confirmations. It's to do with which year you're going to spend it in.
Right.
Okay. using the same terminology is confusing. Okay, I think I've got, and I'm really, really glad to see that you have nixed the Charlie's Lane or the Connolly Creek coming out of the water treatment plant idea. I was never in favor of that one. And most of the reasons why I wasn't in favor of it have been elucidated in your report. So I guess my only other question is, this one is 3 million. What's the average cost of building a multi-use path on flatter areas on the rest of the, going across the rest of the island? I mean, that's a pretty expensive cost per meter compared to other areas. So I guess I'm back to my original, is maybe we could just leave that stage to the very end and get most of the a huge hunk of the path built with that 3 million.
Yeah, I mean, it was, for the portion that we've built so far, it was roughly $1 million per kilometer. And that was, again, mostly close to 80% grant funded, but in terms of total cost, that's what it was costing. This next piece is probably close to twice that.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you could build more somewhere else. You have to build this. This is an important section. It's the next section in the continuous path across the island. It's one of the most unsafe sections of Grafton Road in terms of user safety. You know, it seems like, and we have grant money available to do it.
But we have been successful in past iterations of redirecting grant money to other sections of the path.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that there's, it is the most challenging section. We have funding to proceed with it. It's our recommendation that we should do that.
All right, I'm still thinking.
Councillor Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just going to put out a few more comments here. Thanks for confirming what I thought I had read in your report, Director Graham. I think it's great that you've consulted with the residents and that you've been able to see how the traffic moves. The concern about the safety of this portion of the road and pedestrians, horses, people with strollers, children on bikes getting close to the school. This has been an issue for over 25 years. And I'm happy to send anybody who wants the video that members of the Parks, Trails and Greenways Committee and others made with volunteer filmmakers on the island from that time. If anybody'd like to see it, I think it's still up on YouTube. And that was the crunch area where people had the citizens had the most concerns about safety. And it led to the earlier version of the Cross Island Pathway. And I'll just go down my list here. I think it's great that you've identified culverts that are going to be needed to be upgraded anyway. And if they were part of this project, then it reduced some costs if from the project, because you wouldn't be duplicating the cost of those culverts. And anyway, I'll just rattle through this. I'm in favor of the staff recommendation now that I understand where it is, and a little concerned that the recommendation doesn't describe it completely, but then the report does. I think it's great. There's less impact of the stream and the wetlands and the wildlife. I've walked that several times, and it's wetland, and so I always wondered how that would be done. Seems to me that it's less expensive. It looked like it was $1.5 million less to take the option that staff are proposing today. Safety of cyclists along the road. I take the point that everybody looking for transportation needs to be able to get onto this multi-use path. And if you take it way off the road, you'll have pedestrians and cyclists on the road and on this path. So it kind of takes away some of the functionality of it and the safety elements. It'll be clearer for drivers that that the path is all the way along. I think it'll be less surprises for drivers and for cyclists as they rejoin and go away from the road. So this is clearer that way. A little bit shorter, as I heard you say, the security of the water treatment plant, all those things. I've asked my question about the climbing, and I agree that this is the next section. It's the least safe. It's the trickiest one, and that's why I'm really glad to see the detail here that staff have been looking into the option, and they're coming back to us with this recommendation. I think it's great, and I'd like to move the motion as soon as you're ready, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. I'm going to go to Councillor Getty first. You're muted, Councillor Getty.
Trying to get out of it. There I am. Okay. Director Graham, on page 2 of 8 of the, I believe it's your report, cost comparison. The very first paragraph says, based on the Class D cost estimate comparison from February 2022, Grafton Road alignment option 3 is less expensive than Connolly Creek alignment option 4. But then there's the larger number versus a smaller number. So are the numbers
Yeah, the smaller numbers.
3.148, is that the Grafton Road alignment?
The smaller number is
Smaller
the
number.
Grafton Road alignment. Yeah.
Okay. And then at the bottom of that page, the last paragraph, cost estimates do not include the cost of right-of-way acquisition. And whichever route, which would be considerably higher for Connolly Creek. And the next page talks about do not account for construction of a new multi-use path bridge crossing terminal. There's habitat compensation work that has not been costed in with an estimate of that. And there was something else I thought. So in the middle of that page, I believe that might have been what Councillor Morse was referring to, the Connolly Creek alignment. All of those things add up to 4.5 million, and the Grafton Road alignment, all of those things add up to best guess is 3.087 million. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's 70% grant funding at this point.
Well, we have 74% grant funding for the 1 points for the first half of it. We don't have grant funding yet for the section past Charlie's Lane.
Okay. And part of that, an earlier motion that we had in this meeting was to get the planning done so that that would support further funding grants applications.
Yeah, the planning is a requirement for one of the grants that we currently have to get payment for that grant. And it's also a requirement for other grant funding going forward. Yeah.
So basically what we're doing tonight, correct me if I'm wrong, please, is getting us out of Connolly Creek and farther down into the ravine and away from Charlie's Lane, up closer to Grafton Road. And now we start doing fine tuning and to make sure that that's A, engineeringly possible, and B, that there's going to be grant funding for it.
Sort of, we're confirming an alignment. Once we have an alignment confirmed, there's a lot of additional work that would need to be done. We'd need to get legal surveys. We'd need to get detailed design work done, some environmental work. And we would need to, but it essentially enables us to advance with all of that work because we picked the route, and this is, these are the steps that we need to take to make it happen. And certainly applying for grants is part of those steps as well.
We're not tying ourselves down to these cost estimates. There's a great deal more information and study that's going to be done.
Yes, I mean, the estimates we have a Class C estimate from Artisan to Charlie's Lane. All of the rest of the estimates are either Class D or order of magnitude estimates. So no, we don't have that pinned down.
If this blows up on us in terms of costs, then we've got way out.
A way out. Well, I mean,
Well, we can reconsider.
we're not committing to, we're not actually not committing to anything other than a general alignment at this meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you.
To the CAO.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to try to add some clarifying points to that too, that essentially the previous council had approved the alignment from Artisan Lane that went along the Grafton Road, but down the slope towards the creek. It followed Connolly Creek up to the treatment plant and then back over to Grafton Road. And we do have the majority of funding in place for that first portion from Artisan Lane to Charlie's Lane. But if we're going to change the alignment to come back up to Grafton Road and follow the road, then we need to know that before we carry forward with further design, because we need to do the design portion to bring the trail back up to the road. And so in order to move forward, we need council's direction on whether we follow the road through the S-band or whether we go up Connolly Creek. And for that first portion, again, from Artisan Lane to Charlie's Lane, we have essentially, I'm sorry, somebody in the chambers, if I could mute your. We have the funding in place for that first portion of the trail, but we don't have the funding fully secured for the second portion. And we would be coming back to council with the detailed package for that portion.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Councillor Morse. You are on mute.
Just wanting to clarify, the 3,087,000 on page 3 of the report is from Artisan Lane all the way to Grafton Lake?
Right, but it's also, there's 286,000 that would be part of that project, which is a culvert replacement.
Yeah, no,
That
but I
would-
just
so
wanted
it's-
to, that was
yeah.
the distance that was being covered. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And Councillor Fast, I believe you wanted to make a motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that council approve the multi-use path MUP alignment that follows an off-road route heading west from Artisan Lane and rejoining an alignment that follows Grafton Road at Charlie's Lane. I'm just reading what's there.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And oh, was that an aye or an A?
That was an
Councillor
A.
Wake.
That was an
That was an A?
Yeah, I think we need
Coun-
more work on this.
Councillor Wake opposing. And that carries. Moving back on to our agenda, item 9.1, correspondence, Bobby Parker, regarding creation of a Cape Ryder Curtis Advisory Committee dated June 12th, 2023. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Morse?
I'm just confused about the motion. We're just receiving it or we're receiving it for information? Because if we're just receiving it, then what are we doing with it?
I believe it was on here as because there was a specific request, and it was requested that it make it on our agenda before council. So unless council has an appetite to create a Cape Roger Curtis Advisory Committee or do something else with that request, the recommendation right now is just to receive the letter for information.
Yep, it doesn't say for information, so I will move.
It does, it does on the one I'm looking at.
Oh, okay, I was looking at the something else. Okay, the council received a letter from Bobby Parker, recreation of a Cape Roger Curtis Advisory Committee for information.
Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And just as a note on this, my own sense, and given the fact that councillors do serve on many of the committees that have been working through the Cape Roger Curtis items, I feel well served to date by those committees. I know, and those committees have been primed, and they've been doing good work from the, and we have excellent people on them from the Parks, Trails and Greenways Committee. The Transportation Committee has been phenomenal. We've got some really solid folks on the Advisory Planning Commission. And all of that right now gets centralized back into council, which I feel is at present the best way to move forward with the Cape Roger Curtis project. Moving on to item 11.1, updates to council on Metro Vancouver business. There's a whole bunch coming from Metro Vancouver next week. There's a regional parks committee meeting. There's climate action committee meeting. We haven't had much happen, although there was an excellent event held 2 Sundays ago, or last Sunday, on June 16th, which was a co-hosting between Metro Vancouver and the Tsawwassen First Nation. It was a first ever regional gathering of elected officials from the Metro Vancouver Regional District, and then chiefs and councillors from 10 of the local First Nations, all in Tsawwassen. And it was an excellent event. It was fantastic to meet many of our First Nations counterparts, and to be in a room like that full of officials from all parts of the region. And just a quick shout out to our own local Chris Corrigan, who facilitated a major part of that meeting. So it was fantastic to have him there. And he was blanketed by the First Nations and led some really fantastic and thoughtful and conscious conversation between the First Nations officials and the Metro Vancouver elected officials that were there. And that's it for Metro Vancouver. I'll have lots more to say in our next meeting, both on Metro Vancouver and TransLink. I am away, so I will not be able to attend the TransLink Mayor's Council meeting, which is occurring this week. Councillor Morris will be in my stead, but I will be attending the first committee of the Mayor's Council of the Small Municipalities Caucus. So first time meeting with those folks, where I will be pressing them on the current breakout of the Canada Community Building Fund and our allocation there. And I will hand it over to our Islands trustees for an update to council on Islands Trust business. Trustee Fast.
Trustee Fatt, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to just start things off by saying tomorrow morning, I'm heading out with my husband, Will. We're going to bicycle to the Trust Council meeting over on Gabriola Island, obviously using the ferries as well. And but just to let everybody know, the agenda for the Trust Council meeting is at islandstrust.bc.ca, and it'll be zoomed as well and live streamed, so anybody can participate. The delegations are confirmed, I think, but there's always room for public comment, just as there is with this meeting. So anybody's welcome to have a look at that and speak if they'd like to. And I'll just say that I'm planning to bring up, I had an Ocean Watch Action Committee meeting of the Biosphere and Howe Sound Community Forum kind of related topics. And a bunch of us local communities around Howe Sound are interested in how we can combine forces to better respond with input to the Trans Mountain Pipeline request that we've been getting. And so I'll be talking to others there, and I may come back with some news. I'll talk to Judy probably on the ferry and catch up with that info, but there may be an opportunity to collaborate with Islands Trust, who's been doing lots of work on this for many years, and who can and who plays a secretariat function in the Howe Sound Community Forum. So there might be a way to make it so we can all have better input by working together. So I'll be bringing that up. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Getty, Trustee Getty.
Thank you. I'll accept both times. So yeah, bright and early tomorrow morning, I'm not riding my bike, but I will be driving over, and we've got starting at noon tomorrow, we've got until probably, it usually runs late on Thursday, but a good 2 full days of an agenda. So there's going to be quite a bit of work that the Financial Planning Committee and the Governance Committee have been working on in terms of corporate and strategic planning. So we're going to get an outline to the council and hopefully an endorsement and continue the work doing that. So that was the main pitch from that governance review from a year and a half ago. And it's been quite a lot of homework done. So we're reporting out and hopefully getting permission to continue. So we'll report back next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Any questions for Islands trustees at all? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 13, question period. So question period is an opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask a follow-up question relating to an item discussed at the meeting. I'll look to our corporate officer to see if we have any members of the public here for question period tonight.
Not in person, and unless there's someone on Zoom who would like to ask a question, stick your hand up. I don't see any hands.
Okay. And with that, I'll look at item 14, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,